We're here today with a good friend of mine, Michael Lage, who's the Senior Manager of Digital Experience for Customers at Chick-Fil-A. And Mike, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, excited to be here, man.
Totally. So as we get into this, what we want to talk about today is how to explain something that no one has ever seen. A really important topic for a lot of the people that we work with in church world and Chick-fil-A world. It's something you know a lot about. Tell us a little bit about your background here, what you do at Chick-fil-A, some things that you've been a part of.
Great, yeah, thanks, Stephen, and it's great to be here to talk about this. We're actually sitting right here in Hatch. This is our innovation center at Chick-fil-A, and so this is where we've done a lot of the work around what we're working on in the customer and digital experience. But I've been at Chick-fil-A for 5 years total, working in the customer digital experience and all things Chick-fil-A One and our mobile app. Before that, I was with Facebook for a couple of years out in Silicon Valley, and so I got to see a firsthand look at how technology is changing the face of how people interact with the world around them, and it's just been really fun to apply those learnings to what we're doing here at Chick-fil-A.
So when you think about this topic of how to launch something brand new in a community or to a marketplace, how to explain something that no one has ever seen before, what are some things you've been a part of maybe here at Chick-fil-A that kind of share common ground with that idea?
Well, I came back to Chick-fil-A 4 years ago, and we had a mobile app, but it didn't do anything, and we didn't have Chick-fil-A One at all. And so I got to be a part of a team that worked for several years to pull together what we now know as Chick-fil-A One and our Chick-fil-A One app. Wow. And we launched on June 1st of 2016 is when we launched that into the marketplace by giving away free Chick-fil-A sandwiches to anyone who downloaded. I hope many of you have the Chick-fil-A One app and are using it. If you don't, you'll make sure you'll have to get it. But that was the biggest thing that I've been a part of that we've had to launch. And it was something that no one had ever heard of before. In their experience with Chick-fil-A, no one had used their mobile device to order and pay and earn free food. And so that was something brand new that we had to launch a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, with that in mind, there's a couple of different audiences that are probably kind of looking through this content on video today. One is people who have never before hosted WinShape camps for communities in their town. They've never done it before, and the people in their town have never seen it. Then the other audience is people who they may have hosted WinShape camps for up to 10 years, maybe even 11 years. But as you know, there are still people in their community that probably have no idea what it is. So that's the audiences that are kind of logging in on what we're talking through today. So when you think about that and through your experiences, what are some of the just common challenges for anybody that's launching a brand new thing or trying to explain a brand new thing to people?
Yeah. Well, first, I love what WinShape camps, what you guys are all doing in your communities. I think it's just unbelievable, and it's a worthy challenge, right? Of how do you launch something that no one's ever seen before? Whatever camp you're in, if you've done this plenty of times before and you're trying to reach out to new customers, or this is the first time that you've launched in your community. I think one of the common challenges is especially today more than ever, people are busy, right? We have supercomputers in our pocket that take up every second of our time. We're reading articles and content and Facebook and Instagram and so on and so forth. And so everybody, that's sort of a microcosm of how busy people's lives are, right? Parents have things going on with kids or taking them to practice or going from here to there. And so in this world where everybody's so busy and everybody has limited attention span, how do you break through? Right. How do you have your idea that's brand new actually break through all that's going on? And I think that's a common challenge for big brands and big companies, as well as anything that's going on in the local community. How do you break through in a world where everybody has so much going on?
Yeah, and I think a lot of our audience that come from a church background, from a ministry background, all year long, they're launching camps, they're launching programs, they're launching ministries that are bumping up against that very thing of how do we break through with this thing that we know is helpful to people, but we're trying to grab their attention. So with that being really the common challenge we're up against, what are some mistakes that you have seen happen maybe on your team or personally, or others that as they launch something brand new, like trying to explain something for the first time, What are some mistakes you see happen over and over again?
Yeah, it's a great question. We all have that collective feeling where we have something so good that we want people to experience, but it's hard to break through so that they'll actually try it, they actually be a part of it.
Right.
I think a common mistake, at least that I've experienced in the work we've done at Chick-Fil-A, is that is this idea that people aren't thinking about you as much as you are thinking about you.
Yeah.
I think there's a common assumption because you're in it every day. It's what you're doing when you wake up. It's what you're thinking about when you fall asleep at night. It's what you're working on throughout the day. There's a common assumption that, well, that's how people in my community are thinking about it. And so we sort of get into what's called this gap of, or this curse of knowledge, where we assume people know as much as we know. And as a result, we make it more complicated for someone who's never heard of it than is actually the case. And so with Chick-fil-A One, because we were working on it so much, we may have thought that people just naturally assume how you use the app and how you mobile order and how you pay and how earning free treats, how that actually works. The reality is people are busy. This may be just a microcosm of one day of their entire month. It'll be a little bit more for you guys, but if that's the case, how do you make it super simple, super clear, and the value proposition very compelling? Because people aren't thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you.
So piggybacking off of that real quick, what did you do as a team with Chick-fil-A One to kind of push through that complication? A lot of us use apps, we've used mobile ordering apps, but as you mentioned, never really at Chick-fil-A up until Chick-fil-A One was launched. So what did you do to push through that complicated mess and make it really simple? What did you do?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to whenever you're launching something new, I've since, in my experience with Chick-fil-A, developed a little bit of a framework for how do you launch something new and launch it really successfully. And I think it comes down to two things. It's really if you think about a 2x2, on one axis, there's organizational preparedness. How do you make sure that your organization, the organization that's launching the product, is ready to go? And then on the other axis, it's customer adoption. How do you market something effectively? How do you talk about it in a way that generates adoption by customers? Because when you have high customer adoption and high organizational preparedness, you're going to launch something remarkable. Now, on the flip side, if you have high customer adoption, but your organization's not prepared, it's not going to be a great experience. You're going to have customer frustration or disappointment. And the other box of the 2x2 is if you have great organizational preparedness, I mean, you're ready to go, but then no one shows up and you have low customer adoption, you're going to have high organization frustration, right? People are going to be bummed out. They work so hard and it's not going to have the impact they desired. And so ultimately, I think it comes down to how do you make sure you're prepared as an organization, and then how are you communicating the idea to generate high customer adoption? Because that's what's going to result in a great launch.
So thinking about that preparedness for a second, which is so key, and a lot of folks who are watching this now are in the throes of preparing for a successful launch. What are some things that you found in your experience of preparing really well? Let's talk about that. What are some things that you can do to prepare really well for high customer adoption, but also making sure on your end, you're ready to go?
Yeah, so I think there's maybe 3 ideas or principles that that I would share from my experience. One is better together. I would pose the question, hey, who is the team that you need to have around the table to make sure that you're going to have an effective launch? With Chick-fil-A One, we were blessed to have an unbelievable team with skills representing every different area of the business, whether it was training or marketing or operations. We had everybody around the table in order to be ready and be prepared for what was coming. And so first is like, who's the right team? You likely want to have someone on your team who knows marketing, who knows the community, and who can contribute accordingly. So the second principle I would say is guy cods are good.
Guy cods.
Guy cods.
Okay. What is a guy cod?
Okay, a guy cod, GICOD, a guy cod is a good idea cutoff date.
Okay.
A good idea cutoff date.
I like it.
To prepare well, set your timeline from now to the summer of all the different work streams that you have to accomplish in order to make it happen, and then name some guy cods. So it might be March 1st or March 15th or April 1st or whatever it is. Name some good idea cutoff dates, because if you're like me, you'll have people on your team who have great ideas or good ideas. But when they're past that date, there's no time to implement those good ideas. And so make sure you implement guy cods. Guy cods are good. That's a new word there.
I like it.
So that would be the second thing I would say. And then the third thing I would say is do a pre-mortem. Do a pre-mortem.
Okay.
A pre-mortem, this is going to sound like, maybe it sounds a little hard to do, but is get your team together before the summer and talk about all the different things that could go wrong when you launch the experience. What are the things that could go wrong? The website's going to go down. You're not going to be prepared when people show up. There's going to be a logistics challenge. What are all the different things? Put them on a whiteboard.
Could be severe weather or something like that.
Could be anything. I mean, what are the things that could go wrong? And then as a team, knock through them and say, hey, if this happens, what are we going to do?
Okay.
And all of a sudden, no matter what happens during the course of that experience, you're going to be ready to go. So it's different than a postmortem when you talk about what went wrong and what will you do next time. You do it in advance. Do a pre-mortem.
Wow.
So those would be the three things that I would say. First, better together. Who's the team around the table?
Right.
Guy cods are good. Good idea, cutoff dates. And then pre-mortems. Do a pre-mortem preparation with your team.
So as our audience goes into that preparedness stage and kind of works those things, now it's actually time to launch. It's actually time, registration's gonna open, the week of camp is getting closer and closer. So how do you actually do it well? What are the common denominators of effectively launching something, marketing something well, explaining something no one's ever seen, doing it really well?
Yeah, how do you generate that customer adoption?
Right.
How do you get people who maybe never heard of something to get on board, to sign up, to register, and ultimately to attend camp? Well, I think there are three principles that I draw on our experience here at Chick-Fil-A to share. First, I would say know your customer.
Yeah.
This sounds obvious, but know your customer. What is the person in your community thinking, feeling, experiencing, what's going on in their life? Know the customer, because that will help you know what problem you're solving in their lives with WinShape Camp. So on the Chick-fil-A side, we knew that our customers had a problem. If you've been into a Chick-fil-A during the peak of lunch rush,
Right.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard. We call it the mosh pit at the front counter, right? It's hard to sort of navigate. People all around are sort of bumping into each other, and it's tough. We knew that was a problem. So, hey, we launched the Chick-fil-A One app in mind so that you could avoid that and pre-order and pay so that you could get your meal, avoiding that terrible problem. And so again, what's the problem that your customers are trying to solve? Maybe it's a more fulfilling experience for their family because they need to reconnect. Maybe it's they want to connect with other members of the community and make friendships. Know your customer, what they're trying to achieve, and then make sure you tailor your offering to what they're trying to solve. So that'd be the first one.
Right.
The second one I would say is use your equity. You have equity in your community that you can leverage in order to generate customer adoption. For us with Chick-fil-A One, no one had ever heard of Chick-fil-A One. No one ever even knew we had an app, but people knew about the chicken sandwich.
Sure,
and people love the Chick-fil-A sandwich. So let's use that equity. And so when we launched Chick-fil-A One, we gave away free Chick-fil-A sandwiches to anyone who downloaded the app and registered to join Chick-fil-A One. So we used existing equity in order to promote that experience and generate adoption. And I mean, it's the reason the app is great, but the reason we hit #1 in the App Store for 4 days ahead of Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook is because we were giving away what people love, free Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Right. And so do you have a coach in your community, or is there someone on your team who's got great relationships across the community, or are there people who've already experienced the camp the previous summer that could tell their friends? Use your equity in order to promote adoption. And then I'll just share one last idea around customer adoption is, and this is going to sound maybe really simple, but pray. Just pray. Pick a specific number of people that you want to experience your camp, or a specific goal, a concrete number that you want to achieve, and then just give it up to God. Pray for God to show up in a real way. When we were launching Chick-fil-A One, I remember, as vividly as it was last night, I was sat down and got on my knees in my living room and just prayed that we would have 1 million people download the app, which when I was praying it, I was like, God, I'm sorry to ask for something so daunting. It felt huge. It was nerve wracking. I was like, I don't know why I'm asking for this. But I asked just very specific, a tangible number. Well, do you know how many people downloaded Chick-Fil-A One in the first few weeks?
I have no idea.
10 million.
10
So
million.
like God is able to do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine.
Yeah.
That even applies to the app world. So I know it will apply
Yeah.
to what you guys are doing with WinShape Camp. So again, the three that I would just say to summarize is know your customer, use your equity, and then pray. And I think when you do that, you can generate a lot of customer adoption and ultimately lead to a remarkable launch.
I think something really effective based on some things you mentioned. You talked about simplification being huge.
Yeah.
We think about us and what we're doing way more than our customer or our families that we're trying to serve, whatever it might be. So making it simple is huge. And then marrying that to the problem that they want to solve sounds like a real sweet spot. And especially for our audience who are trying to explain this for the first time, who are trying to launch it really well for the first time or the 11th time, but maybe to new people, where those two things come together, it sounds like there's a lot of effective results that can happen.
Oh, of course. I think keeping things simple, making sure you're really clarifying the offering. I mean, the reality is you guys have a great product.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's half the battle, is having an amazing product. Unfortunately, it's not like the field of dreams where if you build it, they will come. Like you've got to do something to get them there and get them to experience the product. And so, I mean, congratulations for having an amazing product. Now, hey, what is the effort to make sure you're prepared and that you're going to generate the adoption for a great launch?
So as someone who's been down this road and has been down this road really on a national level with launching an app and leading a team to do that well, what final encouragement would you have to our audience who is kind of in the middle of wrestling with some of these questions that you're proposing, and also with the tension of being face to face with people every day who are asking, well, what is it? What is it? What is it? What kind of encouragement would you provide to that crowd?
Again, you guys, what you're doing in your communities is so powerful. I think my advice or my counsel would be remember your why. Remember your purpose. When things get hard and things are not going the way they should and logistics kind of take a turn towards a challenging road, when you're not getting the adoption maybe that you want, or you're not as prepared as you're hoping for, remembering your why can really help you push through. And I think for me, the why around launching Chick-Fil-A One was to help make people's lives easier. I mean, it may be that simple, but that's what drove me when things got really hard. And so I think for you guys, I've seen the power of what Chick-fil-A does to create flourishing in the local community. What you guys are doing with WinShape Camps is like above and beyond that. It's going to be absolutely unbelievable. And so remember that why, find that why and that purpose. And I think that's ultimately what will help implement and help you lead towards a great launch.
Well, Lage, thank you so much for taking some time this morning to talk
pleasure.
with us, and hopefully we get to talk again soon. But thank you so much for your time.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thanks so much, Steve.
You got it.